Good afternoon, everyone. I hope that you are all having half as much fun here as I have been. This has been a wonderful day, and I congratulate all of you for being here, for your contributions. My name is Richard Stern, and I'm chairing the session this afternoon, the first one for the 1980s. I'm going to do my best to keep things running on time because we do have we can't afford to let time slip because we have the larger session that's driven by other people coming to see it. So I'm going to talk about the 1980s, and by the 1980s, I'll probably include a little bit of the early 1990s. There's a little bit of border creep. The 1980s were really, in my opinion, among the most impactful decades ever in the development of automatic speech recognition technology. Things like knowledge representation, acoustic language modeling, all these things that you're reading, they came to fruition on some level during this period of time. The algorithms that were developed, especially here, although there are contributions from other places as well, really have remained key elements of speech recognition systems for several decades after, until about 5 to 15 years ago, depending on how you count, when deep learning kicked in. So I will talk about a couple of different things. I'll briefly introduce the remaining speakers in the session. I'll comment on a few of the technical trends of the decades, things that span the time period, just to contextualize things. And I'll add a few personal remarks about my own history. The speakers in the session, and I'm a little confused because the slides have been reformatted since they left my desk. So, I don't know if this is true for the rest of you, but it did happen. Anyway, all of these people did a lot of other things since the 1980s. Some of them will be talking about things that they did in the 1980s, others won't be. The first speaker, Ron Cole, developed knowledge-based systems, brought knowledge-based systems back to Carnegie Mellon, developing the feature in the Angel systems. Xiaowen Han was, along with Kai-Fu Lee, one of the prime developers of the Sphinx system, which you can think of as the spiritual successor to Harpy, probably our most best known and most successful product, used in multitudes of systems around the world. Wayne Ward will introduce the first successful spoken language interpretation system, the Phoenix system, beginning our work toward conversational speech processing. Roni Rosenfeld spearheaded many innovations in language modeling, particularly long-distance language modeling. And of course, like everybody else, has done a lot of other things since then. Roberta Bisiani, who will unfortunately have to be presenting via video because of a health problem, did many innovative algorithms in search, along with his former student, Ravi Shankar Mashur, and also implemented these in hardware, special purpose computing. Alex Weibel, who's here somewhere. There you go, thanks, Alex. Among many other things, implemented the first successful application of neural networks technologies. Then they were called artificial neural networks. Alex Acero, I actually can pronounce that name, is one of the initial people working with us in robust speech recognition, environmental robustness, and Biksha Raj, at least in the early years, continued along that trajectory. So all of these people are key players. Many more people, unfortunately, there are way too many to name, but I know who you all are, and I certainly appreciate all the work. So some of the key things that happened in the 1980s that I'll just simply mention so you can think about things. One theme, especially early on, was the rivalry between the successors to the Hirsa and the Harpy systems, as fundamental questions concerning knowledge-based versus statistically based approaches played themselves out. Really, the question was whether to attempt to incorporate knowledge manually into rules of various different things at various levels of the system versus trying to learn them automatically. And examples of those, of course, include Feature and Angel on the one hand versus the Sphinx system on the other in the early 1980s. I think it's fair to say, although not everybody in the room will agree, that by the end of the decade, the statistically based techniques became dominant, Current end-to-end techniques based on deep learning incorporate statistical learning at all levels. Another thing that happened during that time was obviously increasing sophistication in acoustic phonetic modeling. It's easy to tabulate the various sphinxes according to the underlying technologies, but the goal of all of this work was to have increasingly accurate representations of the incarnations in terms of whatever features we were looking at of the acoustic phonetic productions of the speakers. Another thing, special purpose hardware was certainly a question in the early part of the decade. I'm speaking here specifically to the work that Roberto Bisiani and many others who worked with him were involved in. Substantial effort was devoted to special purpose hardware, which at the time was needed to achieve real-time performance. Unsurprisingly, as time went by, it became possible to get the same adequate performance from general purpose hardware. Nevertheless, specialized computational structures continue to have some impact in signal processing in the 1990s and beyond, although less so now. And of course, nowadays, every system that implements deep learning, which uses GPUs, which were special purpose for graphics, a real windfall for Nixidia. Yes. We also saw the evolution from speech recognition to speech understanding. Early in the decade, everything was all about transcription. Hearsay, harpy, sphinx, just simple transcription was all that was important. By the end of the decade, we became increasingly aware of and focused on systems that not only transcribed, but also understood what was being said. And the figure of merit was whether the system did the right thing in response to it rather than simply transcribed. And in subsequent years, this has just continued. The design of practical applications, considering knowledge at all levels, became increasingly feasible. We also saw the initial applications of algorithms motivated by neural processing, and we've heard a bit about that in the first part of the talk. And we all know, of course, where this went to in the recent decades. I don't need to remind you that. It was interesting to me that practical systems based on motivated by neural computation took a lot longer than most of the rest of the things we've been talking about to have real impact in the technology on the street. And that's almost surely, at least in my opinion, because of limitations on computation and even more so database resources. You need a lot of data to train these things. And in those days, we simply didn't have that. I remember a 1 hour database was a big database. So while algorithms using neural networks were used initially at the acoustic phonetic level, and they were good at that because they did a good job on classifying things that weren't multivariate Gaussians. Today's end-to-end systems involve sophisticated integrated machine learning at every level of the systems. So I've already burned through, and I wish I knew because my smartphone here keeps turning itself off, trying to tell me something. So I want to say a few additional things. I came here originally in January 1977. My game plan was to stay here for a year, 1 to 3 years, and then move to a university in a city I really wanted to live in. You can see how well that worked out. Well, that was one of the things that changed. The reason why I'm still here there are multiple reasons why I'm still here, and I can spend more time on the side discussing that. But the big one in the middle is that even though other opportunities presented themselves, I realized that I was in a situation where I was in an environment with colleagues, with facilities that I would simply not be able to replicate anywhere. And it's really incredible here. So the first people I'm going to thank, and this is covered up, my initial introduction to speech science was at the invitation of Ron Cole in 1982. I provide this as further proof that we were all younger ones.
Is that you?
Yes. And in the background, who do you see?
Ron, I can recognize.
All right. Well, 50% is good enough in this course. And I also call your attention to the sophisticated professional laboratory environment that we all worked in. This was the lab on the 3rd floor of Wien Hall, Ney Science Hall. And that was the first of the modern speech technology. I remember the sign up was up that saying by 1990, which seemed impossibly far away, speech problems will be solved forever. After that, I've had the good fortune to have enjoyed successive waves of phenomenal collaborators. First, it was Ron Cole and Wayne Ward in the feature, and then later the ADA systems. Actually, I'm proud to say that I hired Wayne when he first came here. In the middle years, my closest collaborators were Alex Rodnicki and Ronnie Rosenfeld. Always a pleasure to interact with them and share things. And my soulmates over the last couple of decades have been Big Sean Rita, and for whom I'm enormously grateful. We couldn't have done anything without the participation of all the friends and colleagues in the speech group. You might recognize a few people. There's that guy in the front row, 4th from the left. This was that was in the days of visible knees, and so for some of us at least. And you're not only it was a picnic. It was a picnic. Matt, you're there in the back. Yeah, and there's the fellowship as well as the ideas. Was just incredible. Thank you all. I have my own students and visitors. This was a shot from 2006. There have been a few more of them since then, not too long after the interspeech meeting. We all got together from dinner. You can see how many of those you can make out. And my students all know that whatever success or recognition I've achieved over the years wasn't for anything that I've done. They came here because of the reputation of Carnegie Mellon, not because of anything that I've done. And they did the work. And I get a disproportionate share of the credit. But nevertheless, I thank you for both the inspiration and all the work that you've done. And you can check out things that we've done on our own group's website. Finally, of course, I'm riffing on Janet Baker here. You look back over the last 50 years, and it's truly been phenomenal where we've been and how far we've come. And this all is you, Raj. Your leadership, your guidance, your ability to think really, really big in so many areas and to manage groups and people have been one of the greatest privileges of my professional life. Okay, so.